Welcome to the Workshop Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew. And joining me today is my wife, as my lovely co-host.
Hi.
So you had a hard day.
Yeah, but now I have that Daniel Powder song in my head. Thanks for that.
I thought that's what would happen, which is exactly why I said it.
Yeah, I figured. I did have a hard day this week. Yes.
Do you want to talk about it?
I don't know. I wrote you about it. I wrote it down. Like you said that you should do in therapy.
Yeah. And I think you made some very interesting points in your notes that you added to the Patreon page.
Oh.
Or, well, that I added to the Patreon page, I guess. Which is freely available to anybody who signs up as a patron, the free levels and forward. But yeah, a couple of the things that were bothering you, I think. You said the mask of competence.
Yes.
What did you mean by the mask of competence?
I think that was like a polite way of, I don't know, or like, I feel like I mask up a lot of things in my life because people don't want to see what's really going on. And so when I'm at work, I have who I am at work and I behave a certain way and I do certain things. And that's been definitely more difficult with my own children in the classroom to maintain that separation of those things. But as well as in like I have parents coming to me asking for advice on how do I help my kid? How do I do these things? And then I'm like, oh, look, now we're in this situation where everybody's watching my kid melt down. This is going well. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and then it just feels like it's ripped away, and you feel like I felt exposed. I don't know that there's a better word for it than that.
Okay. So do you think that's kind of a common affliction for a lot of people, though? Not necessarily just for you. Like how many?
No, like masking's a big deal, right? Like it happens for lots of people.
Well, it's kind of like a symptom of social media symptom too, right? Like you see that, and most people only want to show their.
Yeah, it's also a core characteristic of female autism, right?
I think it's a core characteristic of a lot of people, though. Like I said, like the social media in general, you don't usually see the negative side of things. People always want to portray things as better than they really are.
No, for sure. And I think, I think for me, what I was meaning as I wrote that was like more like the masking up wasn't just exposing that, oh yeah, like I'm not the perfect parent. It's exposing that like it feels to me, and it felt like at the time like I was a little kid again, getting in trouble for not being able to control my emotions, not being able to control other people around me's emotions.
So it was more of a.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was about to.
It's not as surface as I think initially. A lot of people, I think there's a surface level of masking that everybody does for work, for sure. But I think, like for me, it's a deeper. There's a lot more layers to the mask, and I don't know that that's the way it is for everybody. In my readings, it says not so much.
So you felt more like complete incompetence instead of here's one mistake. Is that?
Oh yeah,
kind of what you mean?
Yeah, and like it's like, and I know they can't. Like I'm not stupid, but it feels like they can see everything I've done wrong in my whole life.
Yeah, that should be called woodworker syndrome, because I think as a woodworker, you build something and you make mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes. Anybody who says that they built something without making a mistake is lying. But yeah, so you build something and then you give it to the person that you're giving it to, or who commissioned it or whatever, and then the woodworker immediately starts pointing out all the little mistakes that you made, and they wouldn't have ever even noticed it had you not pointed them out.
I think that's also called being a girl.
The female psyche.
Well,
so
no, but
so what you're saying is woodworkers are all feminine.
No, but what I'm saying is that I think there's two sets of rules very much that way, and girls, like, we're supposed to be able to have it all, and we're supposed to be good moms and good at cooking and cleaning and organizing and keeping all the balls in the air, and we get praised for that. And when it doesn't work and if it all falls apart, it's hard. Like you feel like, I feel like, I shouldn't say you, I'm not projecting my feelings onto other people, but I felt like, I didn't know how I was going to come back from it. And I was trying not to fall apart and cry in front of everybody at the lunchroom, right? And you've got to be strong and you've got to help guide your kid through what he needs to do and his calm down strategies and get him to a place where he's able to eat, because lunchtime is now and the food is here now and he's not going to have it later. Like you have to get through all of that to get him to a place where he can be calm and able to function for the rest of the day. But it's only a 30-minute lunch, right?
Uh-huh.
And our son, and you know how long he usually takes to bounce back from those things. So in consequence, then I don't, and for many teachers, this is a normal day, right? Like you don't get a lunch, you don't get a break from the chaos, and then you're just expected to go back right in, and you just keep going, and you just keep doing. And
so then here's a question for you then, in kind of a broader sense, not necessarily with this situation, but how often do we see something negative happening? I had a video pop up today, or no, didn't pop up. Nicole shared it on her feed about a girl with Tourette's.
Oh, I saw that one today. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the girl with Tourette's was doing her Tourette's things in line for a bathroom or something like that, and it clearly made some random Karen woman uncomfortable, and so she left.
Yeah.
And this girl then said, "Well, we need to make this more, make awareness greater." And I wonder how often, in a broader sense, people look at somebody who is having a hard time for whatever reason, and judge them based on their own, how do you say, their own lens on the situation. Like,
yeah,
I don't do that, so why are you, sort of situations, versus meeting the person where they're at and showing some compassion and giving them the grace that they need to be them.
I think that's what we've lost a lot in losing community, because people don't know anybody anymore. They're not aware of anybody else. You're so wrapped up in your own drama that you're barely getting through, that you can't have space to even be kind and compassionate anymore. And I will say, like, I don't want my post ever to come across as like I wasn't helped. The moms in the lunchroom were amazing. And they were also kind and they were also compassionate. And I didn't feel judged by them. And I think you're right. Like, the judgment came from me.
But I think
I think it ties back into situations and experiences in my life where my imperfections were judged quite harshly. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say next is you think about the community, like using the online social media woodworking community that I personally am involved in. There's quite a number of people who are broadly different in skill.
Yeah.
Right. And the beginners will post something and the experts will post something, and the community is all very supportive. But then you get the random troll that pops in and makes negative comments and judgy comments and stuff like that. But that person is almost never a part of the community. They're always some random lurker or just popped up in their random feed sort of situation.
Yeah.
And I think you're right in the way that, because we've lost a sense of community around us, and we're so disconnected from each other by and large that we don't.
I mean, how many people really even notice their neighbor or know them well enough to be like, oh, they're sick, I'm going to take them something?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's what I mean.
No, it's, oh, they're sick, I got to avoid them. They might have something I can catch.
Yeah.
Right? And that's
by our governments.
That's been hard. And whatever your stance is on that, like, please don't. I'm not. I don't judge that. I'm a germaphobe, so I was like that before all of this.
But you're right. There's a change. I mean that's the people I interact with most often are in New York and
yeah.
and the Maritimes, and I guess I do interact with a few people locally, but the vast majority of my social interactions with people are people who are a long ways away from me.
And that works for you, I think. But we've had this conversation too that it doesn't work for me.
Well, but what
Like
I
I do
was
keep in touch with people online, but I don't feel like I get it. It's still like I'd rather have a phone call, but I can't make the phone call. Like it's such a
yeah. Well, what I was going to say, just kind of following on with my rant though, is because my community that I interact with is so far away from me. I don't I don't I'm not familiar with people in town, in the town that I grew up in.
yeah. No,
You know, like
I almost know more people than you in some respects, just because I worked teaching in town for a few
yeah,
years.
yeah, and but because uh I'm an introvert.
Uh, you're an introvert extrovert.
It's a spectrum. It's not there's a
That's
it's
what you're
a
saying.
maybe we should have a talk about this one day,
Not today.
about the different ways introverts and extroverts work. But yeah, I'm an introvert, so I'm okay with being by myself and not interacting with people. But it is a detriment though too, because then I've lost the sense of local community for me, which I am trying to change. But that's kind of where I wanted to circle back to you had a hard day thing. Community is one of the major supporting factors of mental health in many different ways.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a protective factor against all of the problems, uh, particularly ones like major issues like depression. Having a sense of community or belonging to a community of some sort is a major factor in recovery, prevention, protective factor for suicide, all of these things. But so having some sort of social connection to people is super important. And when you do have a bad day, uh, you
You don't
know,
come home and eat a tub of ice cream?
I've been
I
called
had
out.
one popsicle.
I'm very impressed.
You've been called out for eating ice cream?
Well, no, but the episode a little while ago that we made comments about you shouldn't just come home and eat ice cream.
Huh.
Um,
Sometimes you should.
somebody commented about how they felt called, but anyway,
Just calling myself out. No, but what I was gonna say and I don't remember how it all ties in together, so just enjoy my spiral. Um, I think I was reading a study this week and it was talking about girls' self-esteem and self-consciousness, and masking typically starts at age 8. And our daughter is 7, and I'm starting to see, and I have a few kids that age at school that I teach, and I'm starting to see that where they change, and there's like a shame and embarrassment to, and I should be able to do this. I need to be stronger. That makes me sad.
well, and maybe,
And so, I've taken time this week after I wrote that and sent it to you, and I've taken time to kind of think about how I've kind of shaped myself and been shaped to be something that is quite anxious and worried and struggling. And then how do you change that? How do you change those bad days? How do you accept them? Because the reality is they're going to happen. But I feel like in my head I'm always like, oh, if I had just done this, that would have prevented it. If I hadn't said this, if I had changed this. The reality is he's his own person. Everyone else is their own person. And I'm going to have to deal with, it's been a bad day.
mm-hmm.
Something crappy happened. I found out 12 hours before the school board was supposed to show up. right? Like there's going to be things that are hard. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be when you have to tell the kids that your family dog dies. Like all of those things are crappy and difficult, and will result in meltdowns in our kids. I mean, our daughter had a meltdown because I told her that she had to wait to eat her apple because dinner was going to be ready in 5 minutes. Not to mention our 4-year-old who stormed off at Grandpa because Grandpa told her that she was getting old.
Ran away and cried.
She hid in her playhouse.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I had to convince her to come out and that she was still little and she was still my baby. It was okay. She was upset.
Yeah, she ran
Big
off
rolling
and cried.
tears.
It was funny.
Yeah. And again, like high emotions, low intelligence, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard when your emotions are high too. So trying to remember your own calming strategies and coping mechanisms in the moment is very difficult. What are some things that you've found that are helpful that way?
I think one of the most important things is to, when you make little mistakes, things that don't completely set you off, to admit that, yeah, you made a mistake and it's okay, and to move on. Just like every other skill, you don't master any skill by suddenly mastering it, right? Like
Yeah.
you master every skill by making little improvements in the little things, and then those aggregate into bigger improvements in the bigger things. But just because you're still making large mistakes doesn't mean you're not making progress. And so that's why I think it's important to recognize small mistakes that you make and forgive yourself for those and move on. Because then when you make a larger mistake, it's easier to accept it and move on from that.
Do you think that like that's more difficult for people, like say with ADHD, which we know are a lot of people in the maker community, not calling anyone out, just saying statistically that this is just the way that it works out. Do you think that that's harder for that group of people because of the way they're wired? Because things come like often people with ADHD, and this is very common, right? Like your first go at something is more successful than a neurotypical person's, but your second go is crap.
Yeah, because you get that hyper focus right off the bat.
You got your hyper focus, your adrenaline pump, you're feeling good, your dopamine hit, you're like, yeah, I'm awesome at this, I drew this amazing thing, and the next time you go to draw something, it looks like a stick man having a heart attack, right? Like, where you're going to build something, and then you get it, but then it's boring, and the dopamine gets worn off, and the thing isn't great anymore, and then you get hard on yourself. And so you have to mask up by producing more things, and doing more things, and moving on, and being better.
That'd be an interesting thing to dig into, actually.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyway, there you go. There's my question for you. Any thoughts? Anybody feel that way? Do you feel like that may be something related? Because I'm now very curious about that. I might have to look in and see if there's any research on that.
So what's your specific question that people can respond to then?
You're better at like formulating the question down to the nitty gritty. I'm much better at like the broader to live. Dive in. So is
this a your first attempt was good, your second attempt was sucky? How do you deal with that sort of a question?
No, no. I'm more meaning like,
do you feel it's easier when there's
do you think that your neurodivergent brain affects your ability to, how do I want to say this? Like,
those of you with ADHD, do you find it
and now I'm thinking
easier to start?
I'm obsessed about like, the tractor noise I'm hearing outside right now. What is that? Why is that? Does that make it easier for the task to be done, but then make the masking and the shame worse when you can't reproduce it?
Okay, so those of you, I think so. So those of you with ADHD and probably diagnosed or
self-diagnosed is totally okay at this point. Let's be honest, especially if you're Canadian and trying to get help in the healthcare system. Good luck.
There are quite a few people who follow the podcast who have ADHD and have been diagnosed, and there's probably a lot of us who are should be diagnosed. But
or
those,
autism or ADHD or whatever else you got going on. OCD.
so the question is then, your first project feels successful, but your second project doesn't. So do you feel guilt and shame around your inability to do that second project as good as the first project? That's kind of what you're...
Kind of like, how does that affect your mental health
So
too?
how do you feel about that as you... This is a really rambly question.
Yeah, like, does it affect the mask that you carry on with you? Let's like try and formulate one for next time. We'll ask better. But I think that for me, I think that it does. I'm going to give an example. So I'm not a woodworker. You know that. You've seen my woodworking efforts, minimal best. But I am a musician. I'm fairly good. Have my degree. I'm also a teacher. My first year teaching, I taught choir for the first time ever. I'm not a singer, like I've always been an instrumental. Taught choir for the first time ever. They got gold at the festival, got an award, like an initial award, and then we were recommended to go on to provincials right away. And it was awesome, and it was amazing, and it was so great, and I loved it. And then like one little thing for me, because I think I'm more of the ADHD, like one little thing changed the next year. And then my heart just wasn't in it anymore. And it wasn't that I couldn't do it, but it was that I couldn't do it. Where there was like, if I don't do it and I don't get this, then it's not going to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if you...
And like my first year teaching band, loved it, pushed it. It was great. I was teaching at 5 different schools. I was moving through the kids. It was all great. And the next year when I had to do the same thing again, I was like, oh.
So the question, or the thought-provoking question then would be, after your first project, do you feel burnt out from the project, or do you feel let down because you're not going to be able to be successful on the second time, or
fear,
or do you look forward to tackling the next project?
Or are you terrified of it?
Or are you terrified of the next project because it might not work as well as this one did?
Or your past experiences have like led you to believe that that will be the case, and that's the narrative in your head, because that's the narrative in my head.
There we go.
Welcome to Tidbits of Tamara's Brain.
What's your next project? Are you afraid of it? Are you looking forward to it? Or
like, how many of us does it really hold? Do you really hold back? And like, do you hold back on things with your family? Do you hold back on things in your life in general? That's not the person you are around this. This is the mask that you wear in this situation.
I think we're getting into a broader topic.
I know it's gone, but I think the whole thing is broad. It's all a mess. It's too late at nighttime, and we should go to bed.
Probably. So on that bombshell, if you do have a response to the rambling questions that we asked,
or can formulate a better one,
send it to questions@workshoptherapy.com. And if you do find that you're dreading the next project, tell us how you deal with that.
Because clearly we need
and how you overcome that initial dread, and then get motivated to do it again. And with that, thank you everybody for listening. And now, just going to say thank you to the founding fathers of the Workshop Therapy Podcast. Mr. Matthew Serio of Arciano Serio, Brad of Brad's Customs, Keith Drennan of Blackthorn Concepts, Brandon of Tectonic Creations, and Eric of Overall Makerworks. You guys are the founding fathers, and we appreciate your support, and we appreciate the support of all of the other patrons who are subscribed and supporting, and the free patrons who support as well by sharing the show and commenting and all of that. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening.